everybody, welcome to another episode of Exploring Photography right here on Adorama TV. I'm Mark Wallace, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about white balance. What the heck is white balance? What the heck are we balancing? Well, to help me out with this, I've invited Teresa. She's going to be here today. We are going to I'm going to discuss some technical things, then Teresa's going to come out. We're going to take some pictures. We're going to show how the white balance will change the colors and the skin tones and all of that stuff and why it's so important. So Teresa, take a break. I'm going to do the technical stuff and then she's going to come back. First, we need to understand, what does white balance do? Well, when you think about white balance, I think the better thing to think about is maybe color balance, because that's really what we're doing, is we're trying to adjust the colors. So let's start with this. So this is a white card, and this is a ColorChecker white card, and so it's a white balance card. So this will look white to my eyes if I'm outside in a bright day. If it's cloudy, if I look at this, it's going to look white to me. If I'm inside my house with my incandescent lights and I look at it, it's going to look white. It doesn't really matter what light is on. When I look at it, this is going to look white. But that is not true for a digital camera. Digital cameras see things through RGB, red, green, and blue. That mixture of colors creates white. And so if the camera misinterprets those colors, what will happen is this will be orange, or it'll be blue, or it'll have a tint to it, maybe green or magenta. So how do we get white to look white? And why is that important? Well, because if we get this to be correct, then all of the other colors in our scene will also be correct. And so to understand that, I'm going to hand this over here to Teresa. To understand that, really we have to understand something called color temperature. And so there was this guy, he was a scientist years ago, many years ago. His name was Mr. Kelvin, Dr. Kelvin, and Kelvin created his own scale of temperature, sort of like Celsius or Fahrenheit. And what he did was he was measuring how colors and how light changed as things increased in temperature. So over here on this whiteboard here, I have created a scale. So these are Kelvin temperatures, 1900 Kelvin, that's what the K stands for, 3200, 5500, 8000 Kelvin. So 1900 Kelvin would be something that's sort of cool, like a candle or a match. So that is really cool. So it's not really hot. 3200 Kelvin would be something a little bit warmer, like an incandescent light, those old school light bulbs we used to screw in, and they would have a filament inside. 3200 Kelvin. 5500 Kelvin is maybe an outside day, clear blue sky. And then 8000 Kelvin would be a normal, really nice day with lots of clouds in the sky. So as things increase in temperature, something happens. So if I get my little fancy markers over here at 1900 degrees Kelvin, we have something like a candle. And so there's a lot of amber or orange in this right down here where it's really cool. And as things increase in temperature, we have less and less amber in the scene. So think about those old incandescent lights. They're sort of orangey because there's lots of orange, lots of ambers in there. On the other side of things, as things increase in temperature, what happens is you get more and more blue. So we get more and more blue in our scene. So a blue sky is blue because it's warmer. We have more blue there. So what we're trying to do with white balance is we're trying to make sure we have an equal amount of blue and amber so that our white and our colors aren't too orange or too blue. So if I were to take this and draw a line down the center, and we want to balance these out, you're thinking, Mark, this is backwards, because in Lightroom, when I slide the white balance slider to the left to cool things down, it makes it blue. So isn't it blue when it's cool, and isn't it orange when it's warm? Because that's sort of how we talk about that. A cool image has blue and a warm image has orange. Well, that is color theory. And so that's a psychological effect of colors, but it's not color temperature. It's the opposite. In fact, let me show you why that's the case and why that slider behaves that way. So if we're down here and we have something that is cool, like an incandescent light or a candlestick, what we need to do to balance out the blue and the amber is we need to add in some blue. We need to add blue so that there's an equal amount of amber and blue, and it's 50-50, so it's neutral. That's why when you slide that slider to the left, it's adding blue, and that's what we call cooling it down. But we're adding blue to do that. The other side of that is when we're warming something up, we need to balance out all that blue, so we're actually adding some amber, some reds, so there's an equal amount of blue and red. So that's why that slider seems backwards. It's not. What it's doing is it's balancing those colors, and so we get white instead of something that's too amber or something that's too blue. So that is how that works. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to take this and figure out how do we apply that to our camera to get proper colors, and what are the different modes on our camera. Your camera has different modes for white balance. There's auto white balance, preset white balance, custom white balance. To help you understand what these different things do, I want to create a video so you can see with your eyes what's happening. So Teresa's going to come out, and behind us we have just a white wall. So it should be white all the time, no matter what the color temperature is. And I have some fancy lights here. This is a Nanlite Compact 200B. And the thing with this light is I can change the color temperature. So I can make it 3200 Kelvin all the way up to 5600 Kelvin. And so what I want to do is I'm going to put this light on Teresa and show you what happens in different white balance modes. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to show you auto white balance. And so you can see this clearly, we have to turn off the light that's illuminating me. We're only going to see the light on Teresa. My video camera is set to auto white balance. And so our light is set at 5600 Kelvin, but the wall behind Teresa looks white. Watch what happens when I take my color temperature and I go all the way down to 3200. Notice she looks totally orange. The wall looks orange because our color temperature has changed. But the video camera sees that there's a problem with that white wall behind her. And so slowly but surely, the camera is going to make adjustments so that the white returns to white. That is auto white balance. It's auto correcting itself, and so you don't really have to think about things too much. Now my video camera is set to a specific color temperature, 3200 Kelvin, to match the light that's illuminating Teresa. Now watch what happens when I adjust the color temperature of the light. Everything becomes blue because this light is much hotter, much warmer, but the camera doesn't adjust. The camera is expecting things to be 3200 Kelvin, so no matter how long we wait, the camera is not going to make any adjustments. So if I change this and go all the way back down to 3200, notice that the colors now look natural. Well, how do we tell our camera what the correct white balance is? We have these different modes. First of all, let's talk about auto white balance, where we saw that the video camera was able to figure out that there was too much blue or amber and adjust and get things pretty close to correct. Well, what the video camera was doing and what your still camera will do in auto white balance is it looks for neutral colors, specifically this white wall that's behind Teresa, or my gray shirt, or a black wall. Those monochromatic colors have an equal amount of red and blue. And so the camera will look at that and go, you know what? There shouldn't be a color cast. It shouldn't be too blue. If it is, add some amber to bring it back to white. If it's too amber, add some blue to bring that back. That's how the camera is figuring things out in auto white balance. It doesn't matter if you're shooting with a still camera or a video camera. Both of them do it the same way. But what happens if you aren't in a place that has a big white wall or a nice gray shirt or a neutral color? Well, there are two things that you can do. If you know what the color temperature is, if you're using a flash or hot lights that we're using right now, constant lights, if you're using an LED light, something that will show you what the color temperature is, you can just go into your camera and say, this is a very specific color temperature, 3200, 5600, whatever. So you can set that color temperature specifically. Or if you know what environment you're in, there are different modes for that. So there are incandescent lights, there's that little light bulb, there's outside, there are fluorescent settings. So if you know you're in a building with fluorescent light, you can put your camera on fluorescent and it should be just fine. So there's all those modes that are sort of preset. But to get perfect white balance and color that's the best, what you need to do is you need to have a calibrated target. So we have one right here. This is a ColorChecker white balance. This is a white card. And so it is a calibrated card. So there is no color bias at all. And so if our camera sees this, we can set a custom white balance to say this is what white should be. And then our camera can look at that and then make the adjustment so white is perfectly white. Now, the fun of this is if you're shooting in JPEG mode, you need to make sure you set that in the camera. So you would use a white balance, a custom white balance. And you set a custom white balance in the camera many different ways depending on the brand. But let me give you a summary of how it works with most brands. You need to look in your user manual to see specifically how it works for your camera, because they all do it a little bit differently. But basically, you take a photo of the white card or the gray card, whatever is calibrated a neutral color, and then you tell your camera that is my custom white balance. So that's the first way you can do. If you're shooting JPEG, you need to do that and save that in your camera because it's difficult to adjust it later. However, if you're shooting in RAW mode, you can always change your white balance in post-production in Capture One or in Lightroom or whatever photo editing software you're using, and it is exactly the same as changing your custom white balance in the camera. And so that is my preferred way to do it, because if I get it just a little bit wrong, I can always sweeten the deal. So I'm going to show you both ways of doing this. First, I'm going to take a photo with my camera, set my camera into custom white balance mode, and say this is the custom white balance. And then we're going to do it in post-production. Post-production is much faster. So here's what we're going to do. So Teresa is over here. My camera right now is set to white balance of, I think we're set to incandescent lights, the little light bulb. So it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. So if I just take a photo, so I'm going to take a photo of Teresa here with my white balance that's already set in my camera. If we look at that, it's blue. It looks pretty nasty. And so I need to fix this color. So what I can do is, Teresa, I'm going to have you hold this white card, and she's going to hold it right on her nose. So we want it to be as close as possible to the thing that we're balancing. And so I will take a photo of that. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell my camera that's my custom white balance. So what I'll do is I'm going to go into my menu, and I'm going to go to custom white balance, and then I'm going to say set. It's going to ask me if I want to use this white balance for this custom white balance. I'll say OK. So now I have set that as my custom white balance. But that is not the end of the story. The next thing I need to do is I need to go into my camera setting, and I need to go over to white balance and say that's a custom white balance. And now I have set that correctly. And once it's set correctly, now I can take a photo of Teresa, click, and look, the color is correct. So it's correct all day long. It's all set. Okay, let's talk about the second way to set a custom white balance if you want to do it in post-production. It's the same thing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to intentionally go in here. I'm going to set my white balance incorrectly. So I'm going to set it to fluorescent. Okay, so it's all wrong. So I'm going to first take a photo so you can see that this is wrong. So without the card first, and then hold up like 2 fingers so we know this is real. And you can see the colors are not correct. So now hold up that card. I will take a photo. And now all I have to do is go into my editing software. So I can go into Lightroom over here, bring this up, go to the Develop module, and you can see there's this little color picker here. If I grab that and say this right here, click, that is the correct color. Boom, you have set the custom white balance, and you can see here it says custom. That's all there is to it. If we want to change that a little bit, we can use these sliders, but doing it in post allows you to make sure that everything is exactly the way that you want it to be. And think also of custom white balance. Instead of white has to be exactly white, that's the starting point. Once you have your white balance set, then you can sweeten it. Maybe you can make it a little bit more red or amber so it feels a little bit more like maybe the New Mexico desert. Or maybe you cool it down a little bit so it feels like, oh, it's cold in here. You can sweeten your flavors of your color by changing that white balance. So a custom white balance or a custom preset white balance or any of those icons, that's just a starting point to say this is what it should be, but usually it's so white and so pristine that it has no life. We need to sweeten things up a little warmer or a little cooler to make things look great. Well, that's white balance, and I like to think of it more of color balance instead of white balance because it's really balancing all those different RGB color combinations so that white or gray or black, those neutral colors remain neutral without a color cast. Remember, you can do that in several ways. You can use the built-in presets, those little icons, the light bulb, the fluorescent, the cloudy sky, whatever your camera has. Or you can set a specific color temperature if you happen to know what that color temperature is. Or the best way, in my opinion, is setting a custom white balance with a calibrated target. You can do that either in the camera, or you can do that in post-production, or you can do both. Depends on your workflow. Well, Teresa, thanks so much for being in yet another Adorama TV video. If you want to see more of Teresa's work, I've included a link in the description of this video to her Instagram so you can see all of her groovy photos. She's a fantastic model. Also, check out the links in the description of this video for more videos on color balance and color theory and post-processing and all that kind of stuff because there's a lot more on Adorama TV. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell because you don't want to miss anything that's coming out on Adorama TV. We're updating every single day. You don't want to miss out on that. Well, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.